Wasn't the champ great? Wow. I'm still out of breath bopping in with the champ in the entrance. I am honored and thrilled to be able to host this little fireside chat with one of the most consequential people in modern history, Ron Dermer. Part of the reason I want to do that is I'm a huge Ron Dermer fan. The other reason is that this is the easiest job this whole weekend. We had Ron, I'll tell you one funny story, we had Ron speak to our board of directors, and I was supposed to moderate a conversation with him about that. And I said to the man who needs no introduction, because he's not going to get one, Ron Dermer, 28 minutes late. I kid you not, I never said another word 28 minutes later. So ladies and gentlemen, Ron Dermer.
Thank you. Few things first before you ask me that first question, before I go on some kind of rant. First of all, how about an applause to the RJC? Now, Matt, this is a 40-year anniversary. Matt has been running the show here for 37 years. Those first 3 years, it was really a terrific organization. And then for about 37 years, he's driven it into the ground. But all kidding aside, how about what Matt has done to build this up from all the way down here to lift it up to what it is today, as influential as any single organization working on strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship. So thank you, Matt. And Norm, I don't see him here. He's probably at the craps table, but Norm does a great job as well, and I'm very grateful. The second, and one thing I will say about the RJC, and I said it about Matt, he just recently celebrated his 60th birthday, is that you're not fair weather friends. You're all weather friends, and now I'll say you're Mayweather friends. But we in Israel appreciate that we could always rely on the RJC to support us and to do everything it does to strengthen the relationship. The second person that I want to call out today, who was very kind to me this morning, is the great one, Mark Levin. I don't know where Mark is. He's probably at the blackjack table. But Mark is somebody whose contribution will be recognized years, decades from now, in not only strengthening the underpinnings of the United States, but everything that he has done to strengthen the alliance between the United States and Israel. And it's been marked by courage. Courage. It is the most overused word in politics. Our soldiers, and let me hear maybe an applause for the soldiers of the IDF who are here tonight. They have courage. In politics, here's Mark, sit down, I'm talking about you. In politics, it's the most overused word because it doesn't happen very often. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt who said, courage is not the person who storms the hill not knowing what's on the other side. Courage is the person who knows exactly what's on the other side and storms that hill. And Mark Levin is a profile in courage in taking on the enemies of the United States and the enemies of Israel without compunction and without hesitation. And if there were more Mark Levins in America, the future of this country would be brighter than ever. And that's what we need to have achieved after this conference, exactly what Mark said today. A lot of talk. The question is, are they going to translate that talk into action? And thank you, Mark, for everything you've done for the state of Israel and for the alliance. And you remind me of somebody who we should recognize, who is a mentor of Matt's, and somebody who's one of the greatest Jews that I've met in my lifetime, who's not with us anymore, and his wife is not with us here today, and that's Sheldon Adelson. He was a man of tremendous courage. And he told me when I was ambassador many times, he said, what is the use of all these people, very prominent and influential Jewish Americans, what is the use of them having all this access if they're not going to be there when it counts? If you're not going to actually go to your elected official and say, this is what has to be done, and you need to take a stand. And Sheldon, when I was ambassador, would do that time after time after time. You just heard from President Trump, and as my prime minister has said time and again, we've never had a friend like President Trump. Never. But I remember with Rhoda going out to dinner with Sheldon and Miri every time they would come to Washington. And, you'd think Sheldon had such a tremendous role in helping convince President Trump to go and recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital was a very important issue for Sheldon, but he didn't stop there. The next time he met the president, he went and talked to him about something else, and then something else, and then something else. It was never about access for Sheldon Adelson. It was about doing the right thing, and he supported people who he believed in, and he said, the reason why I believe in you is because you say that you stand for something, and now when you get into office, stand for something. Actually do it. And so he's a profile in courage. We miss him deeply. To be in the Venetian, the Palazzo, and to not have Sheldon Adelson around is something that those of us who loved him and miss him, we feel very deeply. Last thing, before you ask your one question before I go on a 20-minute rant. People ask me, why are you willing now to step away from your ministerial duties? Because you're the person who's been running the relations between Israel and the United States for so many years. And one of the answers is because I believe that the relationship between the United States and Israel is in fantastic hands. The hands of Ambassador Yechiel Leiter. I don't know where Yechiel is. He's at the roulette wheel. But thank you, Yechiel, for those words that you said. Now I'm going to have to go read the book of Daniel because I haven't read it in about 30 years. But how about having such an ambassador serve the state of Israel in Washington? And you see the depth of this man and how and I knew it when I saw him in that morning tent. I knew that he was the right person to be our ambassador to the United States, and that he would take all of this tremendous pain. His son, those of you who don't know, was also his best friend and was a real warrior of Israel and had soldiers who would follow him into battle. And I knew that he would take all of that pain and turn that pain into purpose, and he's done a fantastic job over the last year in very difficult circumstances. So Yechiel, wherever you are, if you can hear me at the roulette table, thank you for everything that you're doing to strengthen the alliance between our countries. Now you can ask me your question.
He's actually backstage because he's going to come out when we actually give you the award. So he's not at the roulette table. He's backstage. One of the questions that is at the top of my mind, and I suspect a number of people in the room, do you think that the Eagles will win their next Super Bowl before the Dolphins do or after the Dolphins?
Now, I got to tell you something about Matt. I used to like him much better when he was younger and fatter. Because he was also a perennial loser with his Eagles. Now he's thinner, he's a winner, and he's insufferable. So, but look, my Jews waited 40 years to get to the Promised Land. Dolphin fans are 52 and counting, and I think we may have to wait another half century. I told Ari, I told this to Marco. I mean, we got to put together a group. We got to buy the Dolphins and turn them into a winner, because this thing is not going anywhere, right?
All right, turning serious for a moment. One of the themes that we have had throughout this summit has been the resolve of the Republican Jewish coalition to stand up and to push back on the rise of anti-Semitism within the Republican Party. Certainly, we've been outspoken and critical of it as it's risen on the left. One of the things that we see within our party and some of the comments that people are making and putting forth and platforming is that somehow Israel is a liability to the U.S. Somehow Israel is a drain on resources. Somehow there's dual loyalty. Talk about why Israel and the U.S. are linked and why Israel is important to the United States and vice versa, and just the relationship in general.
So the argument that it is not in the interest of America to support the state of Israel is patently absurd, and I'm gonna show you why. I'm gonna give you, I don't know if it's a promotion or a demotion for being the head of the Republican Jewish coalition, but I'm gonna make you president of the United States. Okay, Matt Brooks for president. You're gonna launch your campaign now. And here's my question to you. For the next 50 years, Matt, you can only choose one ally in the world for America's national security, just one. Now, when you think about national security, think about a military that can defend itself by itself, that will send its sons and daughters into harm's way and not Americans. Think about a country with a formidable intelligence agency that can give you valuable intelligence that you need to keep Americans safe. Think about a country that has cyber capabilities, because that's a new area of warfare. And think about a country that can make offensive and defensive weapons that can keep your people safe. You can only choose one for the next 50 years. Who are you going to choose? Now think about it. Canada doesn't, well, I don't know, did the Blue Jays win? And it was, no. All right, so we could talk about Canada. So Canada doesn't have that intelligence service, doesn't have much of a cyber capability, and doesn't really make many weapons. Okay, they have an army that has served in wars with the United States, but you can't have Canada there as an ally. Australia, they also don't have that intelligence capability. They don't have that cyber capability or weapons making. France and Germany, I mean, Israel has a larger standing army than France. So you think about, and in Germany, you don't have the intel capabilities, you don't have the cyber capabilities, and we're selling Iron Dome to them, not the other way around. There's really only one other country that you can put us into a category with, and that would be Great Britain. Now, I make the case that we're more important now, I think, Great Britain is to the United States in terms of American national security. I'm only speaking about America's interests. I haven't said anything about values. I'm just talking about interests. We have a greater standing army than Britain. We got the best Air Force in the world. Our intelligence capability, I think, is better than theirs, although they do have James Bond, so you give them that. You know, I went in to see the head of MI6. Last time I was in London, he invited me to see him, and I walked in and I said, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "How do you let James Bond die on your watch?" He says to me, "How do you know he's dead?" He looked pretty dead there, but so they have a good intelligence capability, I'll give him that. They have actually a good cyber capability. Weapons making, it's Israel. And I think Israel's more important than Britain because we're in a part of the world that there's a lot of dangers to American interests, and you don't want to put your troops there, so to have an Israel in that region becomes critical to your national security. But let's say it's a wash. Let's say it's a wash between us and Britain. It's 2. You're down to 2. Now, President Brooks, I want you to choose one partner for the next 50 years in terms of sustaining America's national prosperity. Because you're in a race with China for who's going to be the preeminent power in the 21st century. And that's going to be decided by technology. Who's your #1 partner in the world for advanced technology? And here, Britain's not in the same zip code as the state of Israel. If you think about what Israel does, not in the old technological world of water and agriculture, but all the new world, and it could be in AI, it could be in autonomous vehicles, all the latest technologies, those of you who know the story about Israel. So in terms of pure American interests, Israel is the most important ally in the world to sustain American national security and prosperity. Now, here's the problem, and I tell it to people in this room. The case that you just heard is an easy case to make. Make it. Make it. Don't cede the ground to these ignoramuses who say that it's not in the interests of the United States to support Israel. The problem is that America doesn't have more Israels that can support. The greatest investment in national security is the support that the United States gives Israel. Look at what we've done in the Middle East. Look at what we've done to Hezbollah. Look at what we've done to Hamas. Look at what we've done to Iran. Look at what we've done to the Houthis. Look at what we did in Syria. You sent the B-2s in, and we're deeply grateful for that. But a lot of what happened because of the IDF, because of the leadership of Prime Minister Netanyahu. So look at what Israel has done to advance American national security in the Middle East. About 45 years ago, I think it was Alexander Haig, who said Israel's an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the heart of a region that's critical for U.S. interests. And that's exactly what we are. That's exactly what we did in that 12-day war, a war of unprecedented cooperation between Israel and the United States. And so when you're supporting Israel, you're supporting America. And this new argument, it's actually coming from the right. The left, by the way, has changed their tune regarding Israel. The old argument used to be that it was against the interests of the United States to support Israel. For about 10, 15 years, that argument completely disappeared. No one seriously makes it anymore because of the things that I just said. They've shifted now to an argument about values, which is also patently ridiculous. And they accuse Israel of being genocidal. We're the dumbest genocidal force in history. We just can't seem to do that right. The apartheid state, we're the only country in the history of the world that took blacks out of Africa to freedom, but we're supposedly an apartheid state. And the ethnic cleansing, where you have more Palestinians today than you had in, the birth of Israel in 1948, it's 10 times, so we're apparently pretty lousy at that. The attack on Israel from the left is usually an attack on values. It's wrong, it's ridiculous, and all of you are probably, in one way or another, involved in that fight. But let me tell you something about international relations. I'd love to live in a world where international relations is driven by values, because I believe Israel would be the world superpower. But that's not the world we live in. The world we live in is a world where interests drive international relations. And the case for Israel has to be made on why it serves the interests of the United States. It's an easy case to make, just make it. Make it every day, every week, every month. People like Mark make it every day on television, but each of us have to make that case so that the next generation rises up and they don't question why America is standing with Israel. They're standing with Israel because they care about America. That's why you stand with Israel. And what Mark said is right. To be an American patriot, to me, means to be an Israeli patriot, because all of your enemies are the ones who we're fighting. And when we defeat them, we make you safer right here.
You raised two interesting points, and one is part of the criticism of Israel from the right in particular is the billions of dollars that Israel gets every year in aid. And we have the Memorandum of Understanding coming up for renewal. Do you envision a time in which Israel won't need to have financial support from the U.S. and that'll be phased out, or how do you see that going forward?
Yes, I do envision that time, and I think it'll happen sooner than people think. The Prime Minister, we used to receive, people also here, they romanticize the history of the U.S.-Israel relationship because people don't know that history. Now, in 1948, probably everybody in here, or most of the people here, know that it took President Truman all of 11 minutes to recognize the newly established state of Israel. What they don't tell you at a lot of those dinners is that the United States placed an arms embargo on Israel in 1948. You had Jews, probably the parents and grandparents of some of the people who were here, who were arrested for gun running and trying to bring arms to the newly established state of Israel. We had an embargo on us. The Arabs did not. That was 1948. We fought the 48 war with Czech rifles, not because the Czechs make better rifles, because America wouldn't sell us any. We fought the 67 war with French planes, not because the French make better planes, because America would not sell us any. So for the first 2 decades, Israel basically did not receive any of that military support from the United States. The first weapon system only came in the Kennedy administration. The big aid packages to Israel came in the wake of our victories in 1967 and 1973, because generally speaking, America invests in winners, and they saw us as a winner defeating Soviet client states during the Cold War, and they started investing in Israel. And then we forged a peace with Israel, and part of that deal of making peace, where we withdrew from the Sinai, which is an area almost 3 times the size of the state of Israel, and also had energy resources there, part of that deal was that you were going to develop this aid package to strengthen Israel in the wake of this peace, because we had war after war after war, and the United States wanted to prevent war, and for over a half century, or almost a half century, we haven't had a war, an all-out war with the Arab states in the region due to that peace. And that's when the aid packages came. We used to receive economic assistance to the tune of $1.2 billion, and we also received military assistance at that time when it started around $1.8 billion, and about 3/4 of it was spent in the United States. The Prime Minister of Israel came to Washington in 1996 when he was first elected. He's been Prime Minister for a very long time. Thankfully, we do have Winston Churchill leading Israel during this difficult time. But he gave what was maybe the most expensive speech in history, because he told the American Congress, He said, thank you for the support you've given Israel, but we no longer need economic assistance from the United States. And over 10 years, we got rid of that economic assistance. I was the economic attaché who signed the last documents to receive the last dollar of American economic assistance, which is basically a welfare check. And we said, look, we can stand on our own now. We've grown up from the days when we used to get that economic assistance, and we don't need it anymore. Now what we do is we receive economic assistance. We receive $3.8 billion. $3.3 billion is military assistance. Virtually all of that money is used to buy American military platforms. So we buy essentially American planes and other items that we use in theater. And by the way, the amount that the United States get by us using those planes, we're the best laboratory for the use of those planes, and the information America gets is critical for its own pilots flying in different theaters. So we get $3.3 billion. The rest of it is $500 million we get in Missile Defense Corporation, and that's an Aero system, it's Iron Dome, David Sling, all of those systems. And that also keeps our defenses where they need to be so that you don't have to actually be in there to help Israel during critical times. So I believe over time you're going to see a change in Israel's military assistance, and I believe it will move towards a relationship where we're getting this direct military assistance to one where it's really a partnership. But again, America spent, I don't know if it's $4 trillion or $5 trillion or $7 trillion for its wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay? That's over 1,000 years of assistance to Israel. What you get as Americans for that assistance, it makes it the single best investment in your national security. If you had 2 more countries like Israel, one in North Africa and one in Afghanistan, or around that area of the world, if you had another country like Israel where you could give them military assistance, give them fighter planes, help them, fight their fight and defend themselves, give them the tools that they need to defend themselves, you would avoid all of that blood and treasure you have to spend going around the world. So it's actually the people who want the United States to be very, very focused on where its assistance goes. They should be the biggest champions of aid to Israel, because Israel is the exact type of ally that the United States should want and the United States needs. And that's why, again, Israel will be the most important ally. I think it is already today for the United States in the 21st century. I think ultimately you'll see a phase out of that aid. I think it will happen over time. And I think it's going to see a new partnership between the United States and Israel dealing with all the new forms of warfare. Many of you may not know this, but we give and sell weapon systems to the United States, both defensive and offensive weapon systems. And we help the United States bridge the gaps that it has in certain areas with some of its enemies. And so therefore the importance of this alliance, I think, will get stronger and stronger and stronger in the years and decades ahead.
Can you share, we have about 6 minutes or so left, can you share, everybody, now that we have signed this historic agreement in Sharm el-Sheikh, and we're now focused on the day after and the 21-point plan and that you were instrumental in putting together, what does Gaza look like? I mean, we have a yellow line in Gaza, but we have a green line in Judea and Samaria. We have a blue line and a red line, Syria, Lebanon. Is the yellow line the new green line? What is it looking like, and how do you see the implementation going forward of the agreements?
No, that's not going to be a permanent line, because what we did in the deal that we made, that deal calls for Hamas to be disarmed. Decommission was the word they used, which is the word they use in Northern Ireland, and for Gaza to be demilitarized. And that's going to happen one way or the other. It'll happen the easy way, it'll happen the hard way. But Israel's not going to be on that yellow line. If Gaza is demilitarized and Hamas is disarmed, Israel will move to a security perimeter until such time as that there's no terror threat coming from Gaza, which is well out in the future. But that's if they disarm, if it's demilitarized. And if this coalition of nations does not do that, which they committed to President Trump, and that's what's in the plan. What I just told you is not an Israeli position that Gaza has to be demilitarized. It's not an American position. That's the proposal that the whole world ostensibly signed up on. So that's going to happen. Now, if the world doesn't do it, the soldiers of the IDF are going to do it. And that means that yellow line is going to move. If the world does it, then the yellow line can go back, and we're going to be in a security perimeter to make sure that we're protected for the future, because also the critical part is that the border between Egypt and Gaza not be left open, because it was through that border that they rearmed. And actually, the situation in Gaza is a much easier problem than the situation in Lebanon, because we don't control the external perimeter around Lebanon. You had to make sure that the border between Lebanon and Syria was shut down. Now, that border was porous when Assad was there. When Assad fell, because the current regime, this is the Shara regime, he's laughing because I've told him about a year ago, is every time I see the president of Syria, I think he's Sacha Baron Cohen in The Dictator. And I'm conducting the negotiations. So, in any case, because the Syrian regime hates Hezbollah and hates Iran, that border was effectively shut down. In recent weeks and months, it's become more porous again, and Israel has to constantly enforce this agreement, and we're going to continue to enforce the agreement until Hezbollah disarms and dismantles. Like, that's what the deal is. The deal in Gaza is that this is what Hamas has to do. But what we did is we made this deal, got the 20 living hostages out, are now working on getting the remains of the hostages who were deceased, their remains out of Gaza. We've gotten 17 of the 28, and we're working every day, including today, of getting the rest of them and bringing them home for burial in Israel. But the key question here is, can a coalition be brought together that's going to finish the job? And what President Trump, and I'm deeply grateful for this, not only for the role that he played, because no one else could have done it, because he has tremendous standing not only with the people of Israel, rightly because of all the things that he's done for the state of Israel, but also among our neighbors in the region. Usually presidents thought that they had to choose. President Trump didn't. He's got friends in the Gulf, he's got friends in Israel, he's respected throughout the Middle East, and because of that respect, and because no one wanted to say no to him, he got them to say yes. What they said yes to was, leave it to us, we're going to disarm and we're going to demilitarize Gaza. And we said, okay, and we're going to hold that line. And if they don't do it, we're going to do it. And I deeply appreciate the fact that President Trump has not wavered at all from that position. He didn't say, we have this success, you know, don't bother me with the details. No, he said, Gaza's going to be demilitarized. And I'm telling you, Gaza's going to be demilitarized. But we stopped, we got our hostages home, we brought great relief to the suffering of those families and to the people of Israel. Those of you who've been to Israel, the whole country is lighter today, but we're not taking our eye off the ball. Not in Gaza, not in Iran, not in Lebanon, not in Yemen, nowhere. We're not taking our eye on the ball. We're going to be focused on that. And when you think about, and maybe I'll end with this because our time is running out. Think about what has happened over the last 2 years. Think about where you were on that day of October 7th and the dread that you felt about the future of Israel. When they stormed in, thousands of terrorists, and were murdering and raping and burning people, people thought it could have been the end of Israel and another front could open up. Think about what you felt that day. Now think about 2 years later, we're in Las Vegas, and think about the tremendous change that has happened in the fortunes of Israel over those 2 years. We took a strategic catastrophe and we turned it into a strategic triumph. Yes, there's lots of work to do, lest the problems never go away. When the Messiah comes, they'll go away. And then we'll ask our evangelical friends, has he been here before? I don't know why anybody's actually arguing with evangelicals. We just say, when the Messiah comes, we'll ask him if he was here before. And if he was, you're right. And if not, we're right. And until then, let's work together. But this is a race that I know we're messianic as a people. It's part of our greatness as a people because we believe that the future holds unimaginable promise. And we believe all the problems can go away. I just believe we're in a race and we pass the baton from one person to the next, from one generation to the next, and we're always going to have problems. But you have to ask yourself where you are today compared to where 2 years ago. And I'll tell you something else. When you think about what's happening now in America with anti-Semitism, what's happening around the world, just remember, 100 generations dreamed of living at a time when there'd be a sovereign Jewish state. 3 generations, now going on a 4th, have had the privilege of seeing that dream realized. And if you think about your grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents going back 100 generations, they would have given anything to trade their problems with ours. So we can, as Jews do, look at this glass as being 1/16 empty, or we can understand how deeply privileged we are to live at such a time as this, when you have a sovereign Jewish state, when you have soldiers like the Maccabees of old, when you have a leader like Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem, when you have a leader like President Trump in Washington, and you can say to yourself, we are fortunate to be here today, and we're going to secure the dream for the future, for future generations, by doing our part in this never-ending story of Jewish history. So do your part, stand strong. We'll stand strong in Israel. When you do your part together, we're going to ensure that the best days are still to come. Thank you.
Ron Dermer, thank you. Now, we're going to present an award to you, but before we do that, a friend of yours has recorded a special message that we would like to show.
Greetings to my many friends who are gathered tonight. I want to thank you for all the good things that you've done over the years to strengthen the American-Israeli alliance. Tonight, you're honoring Ron Dermer. He's done enormous things to strengthen that alliance. He's done enormous things to strengthen the Jewish state. He's done it with conviction. He's done it with great ingenuity. He's done it with commitment that is unparalleled. And he's done it quietly. The only reason everybody begins to know the name Dermer is because in the last few years, he's served as a Minister for Strategic Affairs in my government. So first, the cabinet knew, and then the government knew, and then seeped out to the general public, piece by piece, and people have come to appreciate what Ron has done for our common cause. I want to thank you, Ron and Rhoda, for the many years, the decades that you've helped me personally and helped the Jewish state. It is something that will be described, I'm sure, in detail in the coming years. But I have to tell you that this is a temporary leave. That's how I see it. You still have a task to do in this leave, but a man of your experience, a man of your knowledge, a man of your conviction, and a man of your talents has to continue serving to the Jewish state. I'm sure you'll do that. And you've strengthened the alliance beyond measure. This is an opportunity also to thank President Trump. We've never had a better friend, a greater friend in the White House, not by a long shot. And the many things that President Trump has done for the state of Israel will also